I hear gunfire at all hours of the day. I mean, I hear it during the day, I hear it early evening, I hear it late at night.
South City residents fed up tonight. A shootout between young men in a neighborhood is causing complaints to boil over.
Yeah, this crime in Tower Grove South was breaking news last night at 10. Police say all the men in the shootout last night refused to explain what led to bullets flying near Morgan Ford and Beck. First Alert 4's Shoshana Stahl is getting new reaction to the violence.
City shaped by the river, split by highways, and haunted by a history that never lets go. Beneath the shadow of the Gateway Arch, the real St. Louis lives on corners and in back alleys where neighborhood pride turns to rivalry, and every block has a story. From Walnut Park to College Hill, Dutchtown to the north side, invisible borders carve up the city, marking the lines between crews, sets, and lifelong beefs. We're breaking down the neighborhoods, the gangs that run them, the feuds that keep the city on edge, and the unsolved murders that haunt entire families. Whether you're from here or just passing through, once you see this map, you'll never look at St. Louis the same way again. Along the 4,000 to 4,400 blocks of Cook Avenue, deep in North St. Louis, lies a territory known simply as the Four, but locals know it by many names: CA, Cook Avenue Crips, OT4, and NDA, short for Neva Duchin Action. What started as a Crip set locked into a street has grown into a layered identity, sharpened by neighborhood pride. Born out of necessity, Cook Avenue isn't just an address, it's a blood time. Affiliated with the rolling 60s neighborhood Crips and the 83rd Gangster Crips. The Four borrows legacy while building its own legacy right here in Missouri soil. Unlike Coast clone factions, the Four holds self-written codes, dished out by its own OGs, reinforced through years of turf pressure. This block raised voices like 41 Greasy and Mikey Foe, artists molded by blacktop rules and backstreet realities. Their lyrics echo local trauma, not for clout but for record. The turf itself is tight, from the 4,000 to the 4,200 stretches of Cook. Each section carves out a sub-identity within the whole. Roll through the alley behind 4,400 and you'll read the walls before you hear the words. But Cook doesn't roll quietly, not in a city where street names double as enemy list. Tension spiral with crews like 42ville, Tracks, JVL, and clusters from University City and the 40 set. Spray tags get crossed out, parties get watched, drawings become warnings. And Cook beef is never old, just paused. In late 2020, a shooting on the corner of Cook and Marcus rocked the neighborhood. 2 dead, 1 paralyzed, marked as a nighttime retaliation with ties back to nearby sets. The case remains unsolved like many others threaded through this stretch. Today, boarded storefronts and broken fences hide a set that's still active, still loud, still here. Indeed, A-tags ride above stop signs. Cook Avenue is quiet in the way a knife is quiet before it's used. This is the 4. 21 lied, OPEC. The 2100 block of Adelaide used to be just another little hustle strip. Quick flips, corner boys, and the whispers of something bigger. But in the early 1990s, that street caught a color, and once it did, it never looked back. This is 21 Laid, or just Laid if you know, also called Parkside and even called Max Gang. Born from the original Northside Rockers, the crew locked into a Crip identity through influence from Blue Bud, then branched out under names like AGC, the Adelaide Grand Crips. The set stretches from 2100 to 4500 Adelaide, long blocks, close ties, and colder rules. Locals know the zone by heart. On one end is where they raised kids, on the other is where beef caught bodies. Some days it's both. Founding names still echo in conversation: No Trace, D-Lo, Pac Dog, Rocky, Chris, Velo, Ray Lade, Demon, and White Boy. These weren't just shooters, they were structure. 21 Laid clicked up tight with 13 Stone, but has always kept its own identity sharp. It's part of OPAC now, 1 Pop and Crip, but even inside that umbrella there's friction. The 44 Bud and 21 Laid alliance has seen blood and bond. Some are cool, some are not. The street keeps track. The gang shows affiliation to Rollins 60s neighborhood Crips and even some 1-9 Long Beach connections. Distant coasts but familiar codes. Artists like Kiki Madman and Rockstar D rep Laid in tracks that don't just slap, they document. Every verse is part warning, part memory. February 1st and April 5th are not just hood days, they're declarations. grill smoke in the air, memorial shirts on shoulders, a schedule made from loss. Their rivals today include DST, the CN set, the Beam, and pockets like 41K CB. Tension doesn't retire, it reloads. In 2021, a quiet clap on 4500 Adelaide ended up in headlines, a daytime shooting that left one man dead and another wounded. The shooter never caught. That alley hasn't been the same since. The signs of redevelopment flicker here and there, but one thing hasn't changed. The wall behind the corner store still says "Laid" in thick blue letters. That's not just a tag, that's ownership. 31 SMC. On the 3100 block of Sarah Avenue, in a pocket tucked between Northside Silence and Past Life headlines, sat a set that once made serious noise. The 31 Sarah Mob Crips, known on Pavement Talk as 3 Dun SMC or just Sarah Mob. This set formed under the shadow of 3940, a crater where gang culture had already taken root. Which started in older corners, found new life down Sarah under colder intentions and Crip allegiance. They called themselves Chink Murder Gang in some circles, Sarah Mob in others, but round here, the name need not be said too loud. The wall already says it for them. The block rides with Rawlins 60 neighborhood Crips. Blue flag, heavy linked. Sarah kept its lane even as sets around them fractured or faded into hashtags in history books. March 1st is their day, not a celebration, more like a stamp. One day locked in for those who walked those alleys before headlines started keeping count. Their tensions have circled with crews like 387 and sections of 430 Lab. When pressure pops off, it's never sudden. It's old business finding its way back home. In 2017, a late night shooting near the alley behind Sarah and Evans sent 2 men to the hospital, one critical. No video, no witness, no arrest, just bullet casings on cracked concrete, the kind that don't go anywhere, even when the people do. They say Sarah isn't as loud now, that it's slowed up, but any set with blood in its brick doesn't die, it waits. Sarah Mob didn't disappear, and it just watches quiet. 44, LX, on the 4400 stretch of Lexington Avenue they call it, but behind closed doors it's LMG, Lexington Mafia Gangsters. Branch off Blacktop, but standing on their own set of rules. This is Hex World, founded and named under OG Hex G. From the alleyways of T Street to the blocks connecting 3600 Taylor, this neighborhood speaks in symbols. The set affiliates with the 74 Gangster Disciples, a name already carved deep into St. Louis street politics. But among locals, Lex is less about structure, more about reaction. They mark April 4th as Hood Day, a date circled not in calendars, but in conversations. And from names like CSG to BBG, the factions inside 44 Lex each carry sub-identities, but the loyalty still runs back to the same stretch of pavement. Under the LMG banner are rappers who made the block known far past the zip code. Bookie Glocks 44 RJ, BBG Tidy CDG Breast Key, Lil Ro 44. Their voices left the porch, but they never left the porch behind. Rivalries run thick through this part of the map, from 26 Solway and the 6 Dun 3 to crews out of Stripside, Dipset, and Redder. Enemies don't share curbs, they shadow them. In 2023, the name LMG was pushed into headlines after a series of indictments tied to firearms trafficking and a retaliatory drive-by that left one teen killed and another injured off Lexington and Marcus. No charges stuck. Streets called it an echo. The Lex stays active, not like chaos, more like a cold current under still water. Calm don't mean nothing out here except someone's plotting, because you don't just join 44 Lex. You come from it, and you rep it, or you run from it. 44 Ashland. Down the 4400 block of Ashland Avenue, there's a street name that doesn't stay on a sign. It moves in crews, in colors, in codes. That name? A G. Ashland Avenue Gangsters. Locals call it a block, some call it a town, but either way it's 44 Ashland, a set rooted in blood legacy, represented under the flag of the 92 Inglewood family and the 104 Crenshaw Mafia Gangsters. Hood Day hits on April 4th, a day that echoes heavy in St. Louis's gang calendar. Cookouts don't happen without eyes on the fences. Corners don't stay still after dark. Ashland's rival list isn't light. Conflict stretches toward 41 Lex, Dub 7, and sections from Acme to Floyd. Some of their loudest enemies mark the same hood day. Coincidence? Not likely. One bridge that set Ashland apart early was its link with 600 Sherry, tied through a member known as Rookie. His name, like the block, turned from a face into a legacy. Rappers like AAG, Little Keith, and Red Dot put those stories into verses. Ashland shots, Sherry ties, and remembered losses turned to rhyme. Music isn't a distraction here, it's memory. Back in 2020, tension turned fatal. A nighttime walk-up left one dead outside a corner house on Ashland and Marcus. Targeted hit. 0 words exchanged. Ashland didn't talk a lot afterward, but the next morning, tag files across the block said enough. A block, Rookie gang, AG. A set like Ashland doesn't paint targets. It paints lines. You step across them, you better not step slow. It be you there. On the 4400 stretch of O'Fallon and Red Bud sits one of St. Louis's most layered, most storied sets. They call it the Bud. It's the street home of names like Red Bud Crew, YBGs, Blue Bud, OBGs, the original Four Boys, Glizzy Gang, ABG, and Strictly Bud. No matter what tag you slap on it, one thing stays the same. This is fortified territory packed with history. Some call it O4B, others call it Ramo World. Collectors of identity, curators of memory. This is the Bud, and it talks in generations. Affiliated with Hustlers, the 19 Long Beach Crips, and the Rolling 60s. The Bud has long held court without asking questions. It's not an offshoot, it's an institution. The first wave, Red Bud Crew, the ones who laid it down. The list of names behind that is too long for the tag wall. Gary Terry, S. Loke, Fast Dog, Crazy A, No Trace, A1 No Brains, Bear Man, Robbie. It's more than 15 OGs deep, some of whom never made it to see the legacy grow. Back in the early 1990s, everything paused when Scary Terry got hit, allegedly by CNC. What came next would echo for decades. That death became a trigger point, lighting up St. Louis with a wave of Crip-on-Crip retaliation. From that moment, the old lines started to crumble, and new ones were drawn in blood. The animosity between the 62s and the 60s didn't just start, the Bud helped spark it. Despite the war tales, the Bud isn't frozen in conflict. Over time, the block has shifted, now cool with some deuces, alliances once thought impossible. Still, conflict creeps in from rival corners like 57 Floyd, 37 Rose, and KCB from Lee. You don't live on Bud by accident, and you don't cross it without cost. In the mid-90s, the Bud wore green and blue money colors. Today, the flags have faded, but the message hasn't. The spirit stayed, so did the history. Rapper C4 Wapo carries that weight now, lacing it into bars, interviews, block footage. He's not just rapping a color, he's echoing old codes. April 4 still hits heavy around here. You'll hear shots, music, and silence, all in different alleys, but all saying the same thing. The Bud isn't just a block on the Crip map, it's a conversation with every decade that touched it. 387. In the northern stretch of the Village VL zone, across streets like Labadee, Sullivan, and Kennerly, through Cottage to Mafia and Greer, lives one of the most dangerous and controversial blocks ever laced into St. Louis street code. This is 387, also known as Lat Mob, K-Ave, Bravehearts Who the Grave, Team Dada, or just Dada World. You can call it one name, but you're naming all of them. This hood carries dual flags. On one side, blood affiliations through the 92 Inglewood family. On the other, major Crip alliances, 87 Kitchen and 62 East Coast. But make no mistake, 387 isn't confused. It's layered, and in its wake comes legacy. Born in the late 1970s, 387 came up beside 3940 back when both sets moved as one. But the introduction of gang colors in the 1980s broke the city in two and broke the bond. 3940 leaned to Crips and Hoovers. 387 split between Blood and Crip politics. What came next wasn't just a war, it was a lineage rewritten, from turf partners to paramilitary rivals. And that tension, it never truly died. Tied to 3700 Pittside, 387 expanded its influence to all the back streets the city forgot. Labadie, Kennerly, Sullivan, Mafia, St. Louis Avenue, and through all of it, names like Hitman T, a local legend who made the block ring before Instagram ever did, and artists like Ant Finesse who turned hood scars into soundtrack material. They marked March 7th and 8th as Hood Day. 2 days of memorial, echoes, warnings. Their enemies, they come from all angles. Like Cochran, The Dime, Dub JM V41 Lex, 57 Floyd Mob, new names and old ones, each with stained alleys behind them. Hated by many, feared by more. In 2014, a shootout near the corner of Kennerly and Lavity left 3 teens hidden under 2 minutes. Police linked the event to long-standing beef between 387 and nearby Hoovertide sets. A feud that had quieted in press but never in pavement. You don't walk into 387 by accident. You're born into it or pulled into it. Either way, you answer for being there. Doa Mob. South City doesn't move like the North. The silence is thicker, the porches stay wider. But don't let it fool you. Under the trees of Shenandoah, Cleveland, and Botanical sits a name that ran the block for decades. They call it Doa, or 40 Doa, the Doa Mob. Born off the 4,000 stretch of Shenandoah Avenue, slid through Botanical, locked in on Cleveland, and known just as hard in the alleys behind. Doa Mob wasn't a wave, it was a footprint. Rooted in the hustler Crip movement, linked with the Rolling 60 neighborhood Crips and the 19 Long Beach Crips, this set didn't just bang, they built. Our originals? Wayno, Pee-wee, Man, C-Murder, J-Doa, Doa Loke, C-Note, Solo, Static, too many real names for one tag wall. Doa Mob wasn't built in isolation. It sat as part of a tight mob alliance, with crews like Minnow Mob, Ace Mob, and Tin Mob sharing structure and strategy. But make no mistake, Doa wasn't just part of a frame. It drew its own blueprint. The streets it touched became brands. 39 Botanical, 40 Botanical, Shenandoah, Flad, 41 Cleveland. Names that weren't just blocks, they were barcode identifiers. In war, in music, in money, they pushed on everyone. 32 Michigan, SWAT, Sick, and Dub. If it wasn't Crip lagged, it was probably heat checked. But those wasn't just riders, they were earners. Known through the 90s and early 2000s for being one of the few sets able to feed the block while fighting for it. The money walked here before the bullets ran, and they came from legacy. The wall's earliest roots reaching to one of the first black-owned homes on Shenandoah, a house on 3600 that stood when St. Louis still called this too far south. By the mid-1980s, black families migrated in. By the early 90s, gang banners planted. But before the cruise, there were homeowners. The day the streets are changed. New windows on Shenandoah, rent signs where old porch chairs used to sit. But the crew didn't vanish. Young heads still carried a flag, even if the park got renovated. Rappers like Lucen and Mello keep the name running. It's not as loud anymore. But the tag still spray painted near the alley off Cleveland by the log. April 4th still belongs to them. Not because of muscle, but because they earned that date with time. This is the Doa Mob, Southside story. From homeowners to hustlers to hitters. Doa didn't disappear, it just moved quiet, like old money does. 47 CB, in the Kingsway East neighborhood of St. Louis's west side, along the stretch of 4700 Grape Brilliante, sits a name passed down beyond fences, beyond arrests, beyond eras. Beyond eras. They call it 47 CB, Grape Brilliante Family, also known as 47 CBF YG Gang, Wiggy World, and Tifo World. A banner, a set, a bloodline in every sense. Born under the flags of the 104 Crenshaw Mafia Gangsters and the 92 Inglewood family, this block once bled red on every side. That was the foundation, solid, unshaken. Then came the middays. The Dukeses, the Dogs, the Chef. The Crip influence crept in from 62 East Coast ties, aligning sections of the turf with opposing colors. For a time, the family was split. But in the end, the block pulled itself back together. And like any set that survives multiple identities, it emerged meaner, more aware, and more loyal to the ones who never left. The founders, Sean Rhodes, Lil C, the ones who carved their name out of a corner with more than just spray paint. Their hood day hits on April 7th. Not just a gathering, a checkpoint. Loyalty gets clocked every year, no slip-ups allowed. Rivalries stretch down familiar paths, from 45 GFC to Dub 7 and up toward 45 Lab. These beefs move like street cracks, slowly but always deeper. In 2020, a car-to-car shootout took place near CB Brilliante and Euclid. Broad daylight, no warning, no talking, the target survived. The message didn't need words. Today, the youth walk different here. Cameras over shoulders, cops on corners, but names like Scent and Hustle World still hold weight from porch to park. And any place they still call Woogie World. That means someone real had to earn that title. This is 47 CB. On a block that didn't just bang, it recalibrated, rebuilt, and reminded St. Louis some turf gets tested, others get taught. 48 Ando/CA. Tucked inside a thicket of long streets and short tempers, across the 4800 block of Calvin Avenue sits a set spoken in codes, clicks, and warnings. You might hear it called CAG or Flatline or Ando Gang, but they all trace back to the same name, 48CA. This isn't one gang, it's a constellation of names and offshoots. SMT, K8 Gang, Trello Gang, PJ Gang, Curry B Scando, Cam Gang. One body with too many moving arms to count, but every one of them hits hard. Locked into rolling 60s neighborhood Crips with loose ties to a few gangster disciple pockets, 48CA evolved from a corner set into a codec block. Generational, yes, but also fluid, where crews stacked not by name, but by street legend and execution. Built under names like Lil Sean, Black, Arlo, and Male, this was never a tag-happy block, it was always about presence. If you're there, you're claimed. If you're not, don't ask. Around here, the music's close enough to context. Artists like Cam Gang, PJ, C Money, and Rambo score the sound of Flatline's pain, legacy, and fire. These aren't mixtapes. They're documents. April 8th is stamped as Hood Day, but what it marks really depends on when you got here. For some, it's a memorial. For some, it's a challenge. You're clipped in with sets like 47 CMB, but even in alliances, CAG tends to stand with just a little more edge, a little more heat. Hated by many, 48CA wears that like armor. Their list of rivals reads long. 41 PST, 74 Myron, 44 Lex, the Lake Timo Gang, Cochran, Scan Block, Stillwell, and even deep reaches like Moline and Murderside. Whispers say Flatline made its real name in retaliation, not just shots, but the way they came back, fast, full, and fearless. That's not paranoia, that's a pattern. In 2022, a triple shooting off Bessie Avenue, just blocks from Calvin, left 2 dead, 1 hit in the spine. The case sits open, the message doesn't. Hated is funny word. In St. Louis, a hood doesn't get hated unless it's relevant, unless it's heavy. So say what you want about Flatline, but out here, that name don't lie. This is 48CA. And some blocks don't need the L. They just wait till you speak first. 35 dead end. At the edge of the map, on a street that ran just long enough to matter, there lived a block with no exit and just enough history to make sure people didn't forget it. This was 35 dead end, known as Dead End Boys, Trayside, or just plain dead end to the ones who grew up watching porch lights and back doors closer than anything on TV. It started as a clique, a close-knit set riding under the blood flag, holding down their street, not for fame, but for family ties. The 3500 block made them known, but the dead end made them respected. A man named Felix sparked the movement. Not a legend in every hood, just in his own. For him, building a name didn't take headlines, just loyalty, timing, and silence. Their main tension sat just a few blocks over. Crews like 43, GIB, Minnow Mob, 35, Cave. Local, beef, tight, raw, real. But deep in South City, it doesn't take 20 ops to make a war. This two who aren't backing down. Over time, 35 dead end stopped ringing like it used to. Some say the street aged out, others say the energy moved on. These days, it's quieter, no new tags, just faded outlines on stop signs and steps. But a dead end doesn't erase itself. It fluctuates quiet until somebody asks, what used to be over there? Nation, the answer? 35 dead end, one block, one tag, one error. 3900. South City hosts guards that don't show up on news maps, and tucked between Osage and Oregon sits a zone that carves its place in the pavement, not by volume, but by velocity. They call it 3900, also known as the O Block or Oregon Osage. Some write OBG, and that word alone speaks for a lot more than letters. This hit didn't rise from just one corner. It came from movement, a blend of heads from different parts of St. Louis and even across the river in Illinois. All hustle, all hunger. It pulled energy from Raleigh, 60s neighborhood Crips, from the 92 Inglewood family Bloods, even floor 62 East Coast Crips. You don't see that kind of lineup without a strong root system. And the roots here, they started getting noticed when the city lost Michi Deuce. His name was more than a tag. After his death, the block changed tone, faster, colder, more exact. The O lost a heartbeat and started moving differently. Names like Man, Zoe, Projects, D-Dan, and Fat Twin helped shape that next chapter. Luo and Bogey gave emotion on both streets, and sound, names you don't need to hear twice if you stand it too close. OBG became known for more than retaliation. They hustled hard, pushed product with calculation, not chaos. The O didn't flash much, they flipped. Rappers like OBG Trays carry that voice forward, but downplay the music doesn't glorify it, documents it. Cars stay thick with places like 57 Kates, the Ville, the Projects, and corners of the Dub. What's real is 00 has no old identity, just faces. Older heads know what it was. Younger ones know what it is. April comes and goes. That block don't throw parades. It just gets quiet, like breath before a hit. This is 3900, and if you know OBG, you know the old dog claim everything. Just what they stand on. 32 MHD. Down on Michigan Avenue, deep inside South City's cracked sidewalks and high-tension back streets, a name kept rising, short for Michigan Stronger for how it moved. 32 MSG, also known as Trouble Gang. Some call it Trey Money World. With around the block, it's just trouble. This is a set built in the 2000s. Not old school, not confused, just methodical. A younger hood with older affiliations. Roots in the Gangster Disciples backed by links to Rollin, 60s Crips, touched by 92 Inglewood family and Flu 6 Deuce Crips. A hood that didn't pick sides, it spread names. From Rocco Gang to Double M, the breakdown may vary, but the loyalty doesn't. Or second, that's the stamp. 32 MSG's Hood Day, not for show, it marks presence. Enemies got listed by action, not emotion. Friction runs with crews like Strip Side, 43 Gibb and the Jacks, Red Gang, Greg World, CTO, Not Boys, Men No More. The map reads like an obstacle course, but Trouble Gang didn't earn its name from flinching. They earned it from pulling up, not just speaking on it. They pushed back. They hit corners whether or not the block was supposed to love them. And if the alley road checks, Michigan cashed them. Rappers still coming out, even if undefined. New voices drop trouble references between beats and losses. It's not about going viral, it's about being valid. 32 MSG may not break out into citywide headlines, but make no mistake, in the depths of St. Louis street language, the word trouble always means someone's watching. And on Michigan, it still means Southside, GFC, inside the Ville, one of the oldest black neighborhoods in St. Louis. It's a block that once held power, presence, and Crip legacy all in the same breath. They call it the Field, or 500 Garfield, 19 Cora, GFC, Garfield Crips. Some know it as D Money Gang, but for the ones who helped build it, it'll always be the Field. Brought into the St. Louis map in the early 1980s. This was one of the first hoods locally put on by 83 gangster Crips, straight out of Los Angeles. It was either this set, Appalachia, or the Four. If you ask those who were there first, the answer changes depending who's still alive to answer. OGG Nut was one of the hands who lifted it early. And back then, the block wasn't quiet. It was respected, heavy during the 80s and 90s, talked about through the 2000s, maybe affiliated with the rolling 60s too, or even the 83 Hoovers. Connections ran wide, the colors ran deep, but the name stayed short, GFC. Rapper R3 Tazy kept the name alive in music, but long before the music, the Field had already written its own storyline in all caps. April 5th still gets circled, even if most of the homies now spend more time in memory than emotion. DFC stretches stood, but by the 2010s, silence moved in. The street lights got replaced, but a lot of the porches didn't. Most of 45 Garfield today sits empty, vacant, boarded. But for a city that erases fast, the Field still whispers some names too loud to repaint. Back then, rivals came from everywhere. Streets like 43 Lab, the Tracks, or AMG. But the Field didn't take smoke personally. They handled it by principle. Today is a footprint, a faded set that meant heavyweight in its peak time frame. Maybe you won't hear about it on a tweet or a tag wall. But if you ask the city's history book who started the 83 GC talk east of LA, they might just echo back one name, GFC, the Field. New houses / murders. Not every territory in St. Louis was born structured. Some were born heavy. At 1100 Murderside, then new houses. OTM, the South Park, the Murder Eyes. It's all the same axis, different buildings, same tension, rooted in the Palladium, spilling over into Dars, Webbit Towers, and any place off grid that was hot enough to feel like home and cold enough to teach silence early. At first, this was Crip code and culture. The early OGs walked with 62 East Coast neighborhood Crips, Harvard Park Brims, and 19 Long Beach Crips. It was street science more than color. You survived with whoever you survived with. But by the 2010s, the shade shifted. Now it's blood colored. 62 HPB, holes majority flag here. Murderside became the new face of a crew that still carried Crip loyalty in its back pocket, but flew red when it came to movement. Still, respect stays in the cracks. OGs might rep brim sets now, but no one forgets the ones who died in blue flags. Some members still move with ECC ties, especially the ones connected to old housing bonds or out of hood links. And the hood itself, you can't label it. You got OTM stamped next to Free Freaks, Richie Gang echoing off Broken Brick, 1400 Murderside running with 1100 MSG. It's not one lane, it's a flood zone. Rappers still emerging, untested to mainstreams, certified to locals. Rivals come fastened from all angles. Solway, Stripside, 13 Mad, The Jacks, Ike B, Floyd Mob, Calvivit. Even 4s and OECC sets they used to align with now fall into tension. Not always because of color, sometimes just because of history. They never picked war, but they didn't duck it either. Today, some of those buildings are gone, but the flags still fly over cracked basketball courts and stop signs missing bolts. The new houses ain't new anymore. Murderside still lives up to its name, even on quiet days. This is LaSalle Park. This is the Projects. This is 1100. This is the Murdies, a set that bleeds complicated, but never forgets who bled for it. 78 Edgemont, in the far corners of East St. Louis, where turf lines twist quick and block names get passed down faster than leases, there's a stretch a few ride through without knowing who runs it. This is 78 Edgemont, known to locals as the 8 Doughboys, 8 Block, sometimes just BBG, tied to 59 brims and jungle stones. This hood carries bloodlines in both color and culture, not by legacy, by motion. The set moves fast, wide, and loud. Creators from the 8 stand on their rap names hard. 78 Wooski, Meech, Showtime, turning street trophies into stats, bars into backstories for what happens when a hood decides it won't die quiet. But earn a name like that comes with casualties. Enemies flood in from all sides. Tab Block, the Velts, the Shields, Mikey Gang, 6224 Boys. Ops from Madison, 4 Block, and deeper JD Links come on heavy rotation. Violence here doesn't wait till you're ready. Shows up with engine hums and coded stares. And Edgemonts never look surprised. The rappers, they documented. The flags, they reiterated. The 8 hasn't been around forever, but it makes moves like it plans to stick around for that long. Off 78th Street, on the corners where the post office gave up and the trap stayed louder, the 8 doesn't announce itself like a parade. It just lets you know when you're not welcome. This is 78th Edgemont, and around here, validation isn't social, it's survival. Peabody Projects. You don't talk about St. Louis street politics without saying Peabody. You don't talk about hoods that built reputations before social media without mentioning the projects on Park and Tucker. This block, it wasn't created, it was stank, and they called it Tiga Town, Leesky Land. Projects 14 Mob, PYG, YPG, DLB, UMB, Drama Squad, Rec Squad, Jelly World, 1 Projects, a city's worth of names, on presidential records, home of Born Third Leesky, the Dog LB, JCD, Stacks Bay, PYG Wayne, Big Ezo, Nike Turbo, Big Ray Guala. The music didn't make Peabody famous. Peabody made the music listenable. In the early 1990s, it was OG Scoop, raised under the Inglewood family gangster of Bloods, who put Jexter on. Crips sets existed in the walls back then too. But over time, Red ran deeper. Now, Peabody is blood and language, rhythm, and affiliation. Some older heads still Crip coded, but the system shifted. Hood Days, January 4th. 1-4. Every year, new anthem. Not just music, presence. Affiliated with the Hustlers, 92 Inglewood family Gangsters, and 92 Bishops Bloods. Connections stretched to BMF roots in other cities that made money before murder became marketing. The Ops, they stack like cities. The Beam, 11 Murderside, 43 Gibb, the Blue, the Ferry Sets, Cochrane, Deep Offs, units off Myron Acme, and DPG. But things changed in the 2000s. Law enforcement locked it down. The projects had so much heat that members couldn't even post up outside. Officers flooded the turf, but time doesn't forget turf that moves. By the late 2000s, Peabody members were visible again. Parent, armed, moving blocks, and moving quietly. But the other project, they didn't forget either. See, Peabody always had a shadow, known for backdooring their own. And when your name rings in betrayal, other hoods don't care if you fight like family. They already see you as business. Now, the buildings are changing. Gentrification crept into the bricks, the balconies, the corners where strollers sat next to straps. The new apartments are going up, but the old residents, they never left. They just come back with newer keys. In the Peabody name, it still walks. You can change the layout, but the foundation still belongs to the ones who bled for it. The dime, In North St. Louis, the name Alane doesn't just run through mailboxes. It runs through motion, through coded handshakes, through trap phones that don't ring unless you already know the answer. They call it the dime. 3600 to 3900 all day. One of the blocks that moves with just enough noise to get attention, but never so much that they need to explain it. They're the Alane money team. Street Navy, D-Boys, AMTYNIC, M-Lock World. Whatever you call them, they're still the dying. Still pushing, still posted. The flags fly blue, but the language speaks green. This is a corner shaped by 19 Long Beach Crips, flown up by Rollin 60 affiliations, but rooted in something beyond just street code. This is a hustler's block, not built on flashy retaliation, but turned on quiet stacking. Big bags, not big talk. Cross Adelaide and CB Brilliante. This set moves like a name whispered by the corners. Never on front page, but always on the front lines. A day, March 6th through 9th. Not one day, a week. A celebration measured in presence and loyalty ratios and who shows and who gets cut off after. The music speaks for them now. Rappers like Bombay Dine and Cry Dine dropping street-coded verses. Meant to document, not entertain. But being successful in motion means drawing eyes. And the Dine got beef that doesn't need a backstory. 42ville, JVL 387 method, even Alane's own from 44. Sometimes the street's too close to split clean. Doesn't matter. Because the Dine don't flinch. They stack up. They post where they want. They push. From CB Brilliante to every faded Porsche between them. The name Alane doesn't need to be shouted. You already saw it on the plate when you walked in.
Investigators say a robbery suspect is dead after a high-speed chase and manhunt ends in gunfire near a scrapyard in North St. Louis.
Beneath the iconic arch lies an invisible map, marked not by highways, but by turf wars, tagged walls, and long memories. Neighborhoods like Walnut Park East, College Hill, and Dutchtown aren't just zip codes, they're battlegrounds, where corners belong to cliques and blocks to crews. The city's gang roots run deep, from Prohibition-era mobsters to today's decentralized sets like 30 Deep, JVL, and Rollin 60s. Allegiances shift fast. Only one thing stays the same, the street that made you. Violence mirrors the map. North City carries the heaviest body count, tiny neighborhoods post double-digit murders. In 2024, St. Louis saw 150 homicides, an 11-year low, yet still nearly 9 times the national average. Empty homes and deep poverty fuel the fire. Fentanyl has replaced crack as the corner hustle, bringing more guns, more overdoses, more ghosts. But this map isn't all scars. Cure Violence walks the streets of JVL. Elders in Peabody host midnight hoops. Detectives are clearing more cases, and every block has someone still fighting for it. Let's walk the line set by set, street by street, and see the stories behind the numbers. North St. Louis JVL, better known on the streets as JVL. Once a proud black enclave of brick-two flats and corner stores, the neighborhood's post changed in the late 1980s when red bandanas showed up on Glassell and Brantner. Led by street legends like Rambo and Killer, the JVL posse flipped dope houses into round-the-clock money machines and stamped the block as blood territory. But St. Louis is a crossroads city, and by the early 90s, visiting crews from LA and South Central brought Crip energy into the mix. Sets like 6 Deuce East Coast and 87 Kitchen settled in, splintering the original clique into Dooches and Dogs, a hybrid that ran with bounty hunters and Inglewood family bloods, while trading shots with longtime rivals 26 Mad and 41 Lex. Alliances still shift by the week, but one constant remains. JVL keeps tight ties with nearby Carr Square, an old school pack that has survived every beef. Today, the neighborhood ranks among the city's most feared hotspots. 150-year-old row houses shadowed by plywood and police tape. In 2024, detectives logged more than a dozen murders inside a 12-block radius. Shooters often vanish through vacant lots before sirens even fade. Gentrification nibbles at the edges, but fentanyl profits fuel fresh firepower, and the cycle reset. Through it all, JVL's identity moves with the music. Rapper Bumper Gang M. turns local war stories into viral anthems, broadcasting a warning and a memorial for streets that once raised legends like Whitey, Dink, and Lil Head. In JVL, every corner tells a story. The challenge is living long enough to finish it. 26 and Madison, two cracked slabs of pavement on St. Louis's north side that read like coordinates for trouble. Locals call it 26 Mad, and the name travels farther than the city limits. You can chart the block's story in 3 steps: dope, denim, and death. Back in the late 1980s, the corner was still blood turf hustling out of shotgun houses along Madison Street. Crack sales paid the light bills and financed the first Uzis, but everything flipped when West Coast cousins drifted through. Rollin 60s and Harlem 30s Crips stamped blue rags on the block, and by the early 90s, the original Madison Gangsters, Dub 66, were born. Hood Day lands on February 6, when old heads like to claim the switch was destiny, not design. Today, 26 Mad floats between two worlds, still friendly with Long Beach and 74 Gallies, forever at war with JVL, 42 Ville, and 16 Ops. On summer nights, you'll see Playball Gang tags on rusted mailboxes and hear MGECO's bass lines rattling porch screens. The kids blast his tracks because he tells it straight, bullet holes in the chorus, candlelit vigils in the hook. The rivalry isn't just folklore. May 20, 2021, a woman walking home takes a .40 cal round to the leg on the 2600 block, collateral in a drive-by aimed at nobody she knew. Police marked shell casings, neighbors memorized the plate, but no one opened their door when detectives knocked. Citywide killings fell to an 11-year low last year, but 26 Mad's slice of the pie hardly shrank. Detectives still staple fresh crime scene tape to the same telephone poles. Gentrification creeps in from the NGA campus, and new lofts on Jefferson Avenue, yet vacant lots along Brantner still bankroll late-night fentanyl runs. Old-timers say the block isn't as active, fewer hand signs, more cash apps, but gunfire echoes just enough to keep newcomers from forgetting whose logo owns Madison after dark. 2006 Mad is a study in adaptation. Blood roots, Crip branches, and money as the water source. They might not flood social feeds like bigger sets, but every February 6th, the hood reminds St. Louis that it's still here, still blue, and still willing to prove a point on concrete that already carries too many chalk outlines. North St. Louis, just east of Fairground Park, a short jog off Grand Boulevard. Locals call it Beam Street. What began in the 1970s as the Bailey Street Hustlers morphed into one of the city's first blood sets after Los Angeles crews drifted through in the mid-1980s. By the time Red Rags hit Sullivan and Elliott, the neighborhood had a new nickname, lifted straight from Star Trek, Beam Me Up Scotty. Origin and identity. Static Beam and Skin Low were among the earliest shot callers, folding nearby blocks, 2500, 2700, 2900 Beam into a single flag. The crew linked with West Coast affiliates like Mo Peru, 104 Crenshaw Mafia Gangsters, and Bounty Hunter Bloods, tightening bonds through hustling as much as through colors. By 1990, police and newspapers were already labeling Beam Street one of the city's hottest drug markets. Hood Days and Culture. Old heads still mark Feb 5-9 and May 25-29 as Hood Days, cookouts in daylight, sirens by dusk. Rappers State, Mike B, and Fast Money Neff keep the story alive on streaming platforms, trading verses about corner vigils and county jail phone calls. Rivalries. Blood lineage never guaranteed peace. Beam's longest feuds run with 26 Mad, 41 PPG, and 27 Beacon Mob, beefs that flared hard in the mid-1990s. During one 1995 crackdown, detectives working the Elliott-Sullivan intersection seized a Tech 9 tied to multiple homicides after a rolling gun battle left the block showered in Brad. Today's landscape. Gentrification nips at the edges. New townhouses rise where boarded up 4 flats once stood, but fentanyl cash still buys 30-round Glock sticks. Beam Street isn't the front line it was in the early 2000s, yet its reputation travels. Police homicide maps for 2024 still highlight dots along Sullivan when summer heat peaks. In the trenches of North St. Louis, 29 Beam holds its weight like a street-certified passport. Tied closely to the larger Beam Street network, this set carves out its own space, stretching from Bailey to Barnett and Harper. Known on the map as 29 Beam, or 290 Beam Boys. The roots run deep with blood affiliations, linking up with West Coast mainstays like Bounty Hunter Bloods, Mob Pirates, and 104 Crenshaw Mafia Gangsters. But this isn't just a name drop game. On this block, those ties translate into real world pressure, presence, and protection. APG, Nuke Gang, and Bizzle Gang make up the younger generation, pushing the legacy forward while keeping the code alive. February 9th marks the official Hood Day, a time when the street reunites, fallen names get remembered, and the block stands still for a moment. Beef runs heavy, especially with longtime enemies like 41 PST, Dub 19, Cochran, and 57 Floyd Mob. In recent years, shootings have popped off around Harper and Barnett during retaliation cycles, often tied to lingering drama with 14 Jags or 7100 Gagas. Each flare-up leaves its trace, whether it's a chalk outline, a courthouse indictment, or another verse laid down in memory. Like most sets in North City, 29 Beam isn't what it was in the early 2000s when gunplay was daily and the block looked like an open-air trap. But that doesn't mean it's quiet. The younger crowd still throws up the flag, and the stores from the 2900s still echo heavy in the neighborhood. St. Louis Avenue to the north, Martin Luther King Drive to the south, Sarah on the east and Taylor on the west, less than half a square mile, yet for most of the last century, the Ville has punched far above its weight. In the 1930s, Homer G. Phillips Hospital trained more black doctors than any other facility in the world. Sumner High turned out stars from Chuck Berry to Tina Turner. Heavyweight champ Sonny Liston and philanthropist Annie Malone once called these streets home. That pedigree didn't shield the neighborhood when crack arrived in the 1980s. Says calling themselves 42 Dream Team, Scheme Team, and Hot Boys first flew red rags for 92 Inglewood Family and Piru ties, then pivoted when 62 East Coast and 87 Kitchen Crips rolled through. By the mid-90s, blue flags outnumbered red on Matherton North Market, and elders like Coach G and Tweety Bird became gatekeepers for a hybrid crew the city simply labels 42ville. In 2019, a federal task force scooped up 562 East Coast members after they allegedly plotted to kill police officers. Proof that outside influence still steers local beefs. April 2, 4, and 5 are Hood Day anniversaries. Block parties by daylight, gunshots after dusk. Rappers such as Scheme Tools and Young Ville turn neighborhood lore into mixtape currency. Name-checking corners like 44 Aldean or 42 Mafia the way other artists drop luxury brain. That notoriety cuts both ways. On May 11, 2025, a 24-year-old mother, Joray Hadley, was gunned down inside her car on the 4200 block of Mafia. Detectives made an arrest 3 weeks later, but the candles on the curb are still fresh. A year earlier, police chased a stolen SUV into the Ville and shot 17-year-old Emigion Wilkins after he allegedly pointed a gun at them. Another line on a homicide tracker that logged 3 killings in the neighborhood during the first 5 months of 2025 alone. Rival circled constantly, 41 Lex to the east, 37 Aldine southward, 57 Floyd Mob roaming grand. Yet the biggest threat may be neglect. Vacant brick 2 flats collapse faster than the city can demolish them, giving shooters easy hideouts and witnesses little reason to talk. Community elders still meet at Tandy Recreation Center, and nonprofits rehab shotgun houses one address at a time, but the murder tape keeps returning like a bad chorus. The Ville story is contradiction, a cradle of black brilliance and a crossroads of modern gang warfare. Its past reminds St. Louis what was gained. Tonight's police scanner reminds the city what could still be lost. In the heart of North City, where Marcus Avenue bends through Highland and Northland, sits the stomping ground known as Dub 7, short for 2700 Marcus. If you know the area, you know the name. If you don't, the street will teach you. Since the 1987, this hood has flown under the Hoover umbrella, specifically the 107 Hoover Gangster Crips. Founded by Torrance Stone, a figure tied to both Marcus and Pagegale, Dub 7 became one of St. Louis' most recognizable Hoover neighborhoods, holding its flag through decades of street-level warfare. The block evolved into a family of aliases: Marcus Mob, Maniac Mob, Yayo City, Soldier Gang, but the identity never changed. They're known to align with Roller 60s and other Hoover sets, but mostly stand on their own turf. Hood Day is February 7, and it still draws out old heads like Baby Hoover, BG, and Yayo G to remind the city that the 7 still stands strong. Violence in the 2700 block has been consistent over the years. In 2023, a triple shooting outside a corner store on Marcus left 1 dead and 2 injured. Local detectives blame tensions between Dub 7 and 47 CB. A year prior, a known Dub 7 affiliate was gunned down near Couples Avenue in a suspected retaliation for an earlier hit. Police made no arrest and silence once again took over the block. Today, the hood's main rivals read like a roll call of nearby war zones: 47 CB, 52 BSV, 49 ASAP, the Tracks, and especially the Ville-based 42 Method and 442 Ville. Long-standing feuds with 62 and 87 Crips sets add to the chaos, even though they share similar roots on paper. Out here, Alliance is less about color and more about loyalty, and Marcus Mob stays on his own code. Tied loosely to 4500 LAB, Dub 7 still holds weight in STO gang politics. It's not the most talked about set, but that's by design. They move quiet, strike loud, and let the street legends build themselves. Just north of the Fox Theater, Delmar Boulevard splits around what used to be the Arthur A. Blumeyer homes. 4 14-story towers ringed by low-rise apartments poured in 1967 as part of St. Louis' answer to high-density public housing. Most of the high-rises came down between 2006 and 2014. The last tower was clawed to rubble on October 24, 2014, clearing sight lines for the mixed in-house townhouses that stand there today. The demolition never erased the name. The Blue Magic, Obama Boys, whatever tag the younger crowd sprays, still traces back to the Blumeyer posse, a clique that grew out of old school hustlers and later tied itself to 62 East Coast, Rawlins 60S, and 19 Long Beach Crip networks. In the 1,990 Esther projects were an open air market, so busy, outsiders joked you needed a passport to walk Del Mar. One former resident recalls starting on the corner at 14 and watching the towers right around him. With Money Came Blood, a 2021 Justice Department case laid out how a rival drug crew paid an informant to feed them locations of Blumeyer members, leading to a string of shootings and 6 murders between July 2013 and March 2014. The indictment spelled out the logic of the street: clear out the blue, control the strip. The neighborhood's most famous voice, rapper 30 Deep Grimy, turned that pressure into streamed numbers, then became an example. Caught with a 9mm Beretta during a 2021 traffic stop, he pled guilty and drew more than 7 years in federal prison for being a felon with a firearm. Even without the towers, the ground stays hot. A 2023 triple shooting 2 blocks away in Grand Center put fresh tape around the Newtown homes. Detectives said the spark was a dispute that started inside the rebuilt complex and spilled onto Josephine Baker Boulevard. Today, Blumeyer blocks still answer the hood they on March 3 and 4, still beef with JVL, 14 Jex, and 16 Ops, and still trade loyalty for hustle. If you weren't born on Del Mar, you earn your welcome with silence or cash. The high rises may be gone, but the blue never left. From the crest of Compton Hill, you can see half the south side, but the streets curling off 3400 Park Avenue keep their stories close. Locals call the slope Hill Pride. Blocks of Vista, Henrietta, and Terry Park that once looked bombed out even before the crack era. In the late 1980s, hustlers like Pee Wee and Willie Moe turned the Hill into one of St. Louis' biggest weed and powder depots. The cash bought Cutlasses, Chrome 38S, and most important, the ear of Rawlins 60S and Nutty Block visitors who blessed the set with Crip credentials. Even when a handful of blood cousins posted up, the hustle stayed blue. Police files still tag the area 34 Parkside, but the younger crowd answers to names like Vista Block, Add the Boys, or simply the 34. Hood Day drops each March 2, 4, and 5. Grills fire at noon, and by dusk, gunfire usually answers. A 19-year-old was hit outside his aunt's house on the 3200 block of Henrietta after midnight. The shooter vanished into the alleys, and detectives found no witnesses willing to talk. The Hill's long feud with 27 Mac and on-again/off-again static with Grape Hill sparks most of today's incidents, but money is the real prize. Fentanyl bundles replace dime bags, and the rebuilt townhomes lining Park Avenue give crews fresh corners to watch. SLU's plan to plan 40-plus infill houses down the slope promises new sidewalks and streetlights. It also pushes old residents to decide whether to sell out or dig in. Yet Hilltop's code hasn't changed since the first Vista Avenue gangsters painted 34 PA on the stop sign. Earn, defend, repeat. The hill may look prettier than it did in the 90s, but the ground beneath those new porches is still claimed soil. And after dark, the view from the top is lit by muzzle flashes as often as by city lights. Tucked in the north side of St. Louis is a set that blends local grit with deep West Coast roots. 26 Grape Hill, what used to be known simply as the Hill, got rebranded in the late 1980s when two outside forces collided. Mexican Barrio Grape affiliates from Watts and later the infamous 103rd Grape Street Crips from Jordan Downs in LA. Their presence changed the block forever, leaving behind a new identity and a new name, Grape Hill. By 1987, Crip energy was embedded in the soil. The hill had already been a major heroin hub in the early 80s, but when the Grapes showed up, they stamped the area purple, linked it to Jordan Downs, and helped its members evolve from just hustlers to a certified Grape Street extension. The Colorado Rockies cap with its bold CR became the unofficial uniform, standing in for Grape, a quiet shout out to Grape. Known aliases like OTG, GMG, and G Money Gang reflect the different branches inside Grape Hill, but they all fly under the same fruit flag. Hood Day hits on February 6th and 7th when the set turns up, posts deep, and pays homage to founders like Tank, Peace Lope, and Rixie Ross. Beef still simmers with nearby seps like 27 Mac and 34 Park, though not everyone's locked in on that war. Some still have ties on both sides. But feuds with the Jacks, 44 Lex, and 48 Shreve run deeper, with recent years seeing back and forth shootings that never make headlines but always leave scars. In 2023, a car was found riddled with bullets near Garrison and Shreve. No arrests, no witnesses, but street sources traced the hit back to Grape Hill rivals. Today, rappers like QMS Louie and Ben Lion 26 keep the Grape name alive online, narrating hood politics through music, street codes, and memories of who's no longer around. And even with gentrification creeping into parts of the north side, Grape Hill's reputation stays firm. Still purple, still active, still tied to Watts, and still standing on what the OG. On the south side of St. Louis, tucked between Jefferson Avenue and Walnut Park, lies a stretch of turf known as 27 Mac, short for 2700 Acomic Street. This isn't just another neighborhood, it's a set with deep roots, West Coast connections, and a name that rings out through the STL streets as much as it does online. Back in the early 1000s, 980s, 27 Mac was strictly about the hustle. OGs like L-Dog, King Mac, and Tito set the tone, laying the blueprint for what would kind of waste pulling to us out. In the mid to late 80s, the energy shifted. Crip flags went up, alliances formed, and Fox Park turned into a certified Crip stronghold. OGs like L-Dog, King Mac, and Tito set the tone, laying the blueprint for what would become Macside. The set reps a wide family of names: AMG, BFMG, Ace World, Buckout Boys, and Blue Fox all operate under the 27 Mac umbrella. Their Hood Day, February 7th, is when the full lineup posts up in deep numbers to celebrate the block and remember those lost to the system or the streets. Ties to other Crip sets like Cabonic Chords, Cochran, and 44 Bud keep the network strong, but 27 Mac has made plenty of enemies over time. Their most visible rivalry is with nearby 26 Grape Hill, a feud that's flared off and on for decades. In 2022, a shootout on Russell Boulevard left 2 injured. Street chatter blamed it on a Mac Vast Grape flare-up, but nobody talked and no charges stuck. Other rivalries run with sets like 57 Floyd Mob, 45 GFC, and 41 Dell, and their long-running beef with Darkside Bloods has left scars that still show up on the city's homicide maps. In 2024, a 16-year-old was gunned down on the 2700 block of Acomic. Detectives tied the shooting to retaliatory gang violence, but again, no witnesses came forward. Through, the set pushes forward. Rappers like Mo P, 27 Pooh Shop, and Buckout Boy Nick keep the Mac story alive in STL's underground music scene, telling tales of fast money, backdoor politics, and day-to-day life in a neighborhood where being outside too long can make you a target. Today, even as gentrification spreads through parts of Fox Park, Acomic remains raw. Boarded windows mixed with newly painted brick, but the energy hasn't changed. This is still 27 Mac, still Crip, still active. North of downtown, just off 13th Street in Madison, stand the scattered red brick walk-ups, once known as Murphy Blair homes. In the late 1000s, 986, the complex flipped from a small blood pocket into an all-purpose hustle spot. First heroin, then powder, then today's fentanyl, pulling in Crip kneeling young crews who eventually branded themselves Downtown Taliban or simply Murphy Blair Gang, MBG. OGs like Peak and Freddie C ran the blocks, while lieutenants such as Lil Glenn and MT kept the money moving. The name hit the federal radar in 2017 when 7 downtown Taliban members were indicted on conspiracy charges that tied the clique to kilos of heroin and a string of rolling gun battles meant to wipe out rivals who threatened their turf. Federal prosecutors said the crew used Snapchat and Facebook Live to taunt enemies and coordinate retaliation, linking them to at least a half-dozen non-fatal shootings across North City. Murphy Blair hasn't cooled. Around 11:35 p.m. on March 17, 2025, 2 masked gunmen sprayed the 1400 block of Chambers Street with rifle and pistol fire, shredding apartment walls and parked cars. Residents ducked, but no one was hit. Detectives released surveillance stills, warning the suspects were armed and dangerous and known to drift between Murphy Blair and Preservation Place on Cass Avenue. Today, the complex, renovated but still low income, celebrates Hood Day each January 3-4. Rappers like NWMC Murder and more bands memorialize fallen friends over drill beats, trading verses about 13 Mad and downtown Taliban politics. The set maintains loose ties with Warren Block and occasional alliances with 74 Gangster disciples, yet fused with 26 Mad, Cochran, and 41 PPG keep gunshot detectors busy. The old high-rise towers are gone, but the corners still demand attacks. Speak softly, flash loyalty, and remember that every brick on Murphy Blair was mortgaged long ago in blood and bail money. Tucked between Union and Goodfellow, running along 50th through 52nd and Minerva Avenue, is a set known to locals and rivals alike as Nerve Block. What started as a small scattered neighborhood with ties to Bloods and Deuces in the early 2000s flipped entirely when a group from the 4th Ward came in and made Minerva their own. By the time the dust settled, Nerve had become a Crips stronghold, flying flags for Rollins 60S neighborhood Crips and 83 Gangsters. Known aliases like 50 Nerve, 51 Nerve Block, Trav Lock Gang, and Rello Pack all fall under the Nerve umbrella, with Hood Days celebrated on April 1st and May 1st and 2nd. Dates marked with barbecues during the day and often retaliation or shootings by night. The music scene gave Nerve a louder voice, with rappers like 2on4S, Nerve Voted S, and Turk 4S turning local politics into tracks that now flood social platforms. Their songs mention blocks like 50 the Home Team and Lost Ski Land, reinforcing Nerve's identity and claiming territory bar by bar. While Nerve Block stays tightly tied to 41 Dell and 52 IKB, it's the rivalry list that really feels the tension. Beasts with AMG, The Trox, Big 5, and 64 Wellston have turned parts of Minerva into hot zones. In 2023, a 17-year-old was killed in a broad daylight shooting near 51st and Minerva. Detectives linked it to an earlier retaliation from a nearby AMG affiliate. Witnesses heard over 30 shots, but as usual, no one cooperated. In 2021, a federal gang investigation into surrounding sets like BOB and Ridge Mob named Nerve Block and Wiretap Chatter. No one from Nerve was indicted that round, but the feds noted the set as territorial, highly reactive, and heavily armed, based on previous surveillance footage and community tips. Even with gentrification knocking at the edge of Del Mar, Nerve Block stays intact, partly due to its distance from redevelopment zones, and mostly because it's a known no-fly zone for outsiders. You don't walk down 50th or 53rd near Minerva unless you got ties, and even then you're watched. The old days of Bloods and Deuces may be long gone, but the blueprint they laid down is still visible in the way Nerve Block moves. They flipped the block, claimed it, and defended on foot, in music, and with silence when the sirens show up. In the 4300 block of Gibson Avenue on Southside St. Louis lies 43 Gibbs, short for Gibson Gangsters, a Crip set once known as the Southside Posse before becoming influenced and reshaped by the 53rd Alane Gangsters and Rolling 60S. OG founders like Kirby McClendon, G-Code, and Juice set the tone, and today names like FMG, Buck Tread 3, YZ, and Gibbs Spaz carry the legacy forward through rap, street presence, and identity. They lay claim to turf from Gibson to Parker's, flying flags like DGB and Fast Money Gang, Hood Day is marked every April 3, when crews post up in force, history and shift to Crip influence. Originally influenced by old neighborhood crews is Peanut from 53rd Avalon, who officially put this hood to work, sealing this transition into a Crip set. A Reddit commenter on r/State Louis summed it up well. The gang was most prevalent in the 90s and early 2000s prior to gentrification of the surrounding area, but still has a legacy to this day. Almost every single killing has taken place within this specified territory. Recent violence and redevelopment. Despite gentrification in Forest Park Southeast, the block hasn't gone quiet. A fatal shooting rocked the area on March 28, 2025. A 60-year-old woman, Doris Morrow, was found murdered inside her home on 4300 Gibson Spot. Crime data shows it's been a murder zone for years. Alliances and feuds. Strong ties connect them to other Crip factions, but enemies are plentiful. 39 Stripside, 14 Jacks, 26 Solway, Minnow Mob, 45 ONG, 57 Floyd Mob, Darkside Bloods, 34 I Block, Cochran, 42 Ville, Dub 19, 41 PST, 45 GFC, 60 LAC, 27 MAC, 52 AICB, and 37 Mob Sharpeny/Villainy Village. At gentrification and redevelopment nibble at their edges. Cultural and social footprint. Though they've receded from national headlines, sources note the set remains alive in Gibson. The gentrifying Grove area may be safer during the day, but after dark, those old rivalries still echo on Gibson Avenue. In the 3200 blocks of Ohio and California avenues, the set known as the SIC, short for Strictly in Cash, has carved out a reputation that still resonates on State Street. Originating in the late 1990s as a small-time hustle crew on the Ohio block, it later absorbed influence from the nearby Cali block, but remained rooted in Ohio, where their primary identity took hold. They first flew under Hoover Crip colors, then shifted toward blood alignment through ties with 92 Inglewood and Rollin 60S, along with indirect connections to gangster disciples. Founders like Ron C., OG 107 VEL, and Brick/Lanell helped transition the SIC into strictly cash operations, drug sales, street corner trades, and coordinated moves across the State Street corridor. The SIC marks major gatherings on March 2, May 5, and July 31, the latter celebrating founders Tooka and Big Papa. Rappers like Jizzle Bucks, Lil Half, Dio Murder, and MBOTJ keep the flag flying today, mixing tales of grind, street feuds, and loyalty through drill beats and local releases. While direct indictments tied specifically to the SIC are scarce in public records, a 2024 bust dismantled the 55 Boys, another Southside fentanyl crew highly linked to State Street, revealing hundreds of thousands in cash, weapons, and wide-ranging ties across multiple State Street sets. Jizzle Bucks received a 12-year federal sentence for his role. Their known rivalries are currently limited to 39 Stripside and The View, though State Street Studios tell of ongoing tensions low enough to avoid daily headline. To this day, you'll still see Strictly in Cash tags at 3200 Ohio and 3300 Cali, even as gentrification edges into the Strip. The money hasn't stopped, the loyalty hasn't weakened, and the SIC flag still flaps when the corner lights go on. Just south of Walnut Park at 5700 Kinloch Avenue, you'll find 57 Kinloch, also known as 57K Mob or FMB/FBK. Born as a blood crew, this set later aligned with the 92 Inglewood family and 14 Crenshaw Mafia Bloods, securing deep connections with LA factions. OGs like Big Man on Black laid the foundation, creating a pocket that hustled by day, guarded by red at night. Their rapper, Certified F, puts Kennedy on track with street-level authenticity. They mark their Hood Day on May 7, a day of reunion, homage, and sometimes tensions. Their primary reported rival is BOD's Crips, a nearby blue crew known for graffiti tagging K-Mob's block and occasionally escalating into street violence. Street intelligence from local Reddit threads places 57 Kinloch firmly under the 104 Crenshaw umbrella, a notable alignment in STL's blood landscape. 57K Mob, 104 CMB, Westside St. Louis. Despite limited public records on indictments or homicides tied to 57 Kinloch, the set remains active. Their turf still bears red tags, Casio tattoos, and the occasional tribute dish rubbed out on street corners. Just north of downtown St. Louis, in the area around 20th and O'Fallon, sits Carr Square Village, often called CSV VTO Vaughn Taken Over or Blinkyville. Once known as Vaughn Projects alongside Pruitt I Go, it was redeveloped into low-rise housing by the early 2000s after the towers came down. By 2007, many Vaughn residents had relocated into Carr Square, JVL or OPS low-rise apartments, spreading its influence across. Built in the 1940s as one of the nation's first public housing designs, Carr Square's dense blocks remain largely black and rental-filled, holding on to a legacy of self-managed community control. Its crews fly under blood flags, colors like 92 Bishop, 92 Inglewood, and 104 Crenshaw, as well as more local IDs like Bloodstone Villains. Founders such as Percy, Nutty P, JK, Lil Near, and Blinky helped shape the neighborhood's identity, and rappers TK and Lou Rayo carried those stories into local music. Each January 5/8 Hood Day marks a 4-day gathering, with cookouts by day and remembrance of lost members by night. Violence has never been far away. On the evening of January 8th, 2025, 44-year-old Byron Jones was shot in the head outside the McDonald's on North Tucker. Detectives continue investigating Dot. Just a week later, January 15th, 19-year-old Jordan Allen was murdered on North 16th Street, reinforcing Carr Square's troubling homicide stats. A snapshot of today shows 3 teens arrested on June 22, 2025 after a shot spotter alert near 20th and O'Fallon. Cops say they found firearms and pursued them with K9 backup. Crime trackers show Carr Square's violent crime hovering around 28 incidents per 1,000 residents, well above the city average. CSV crews have long-standing rivalries with nearby hoods like Cochran, Murphy, Blair, OPAC, Pruitt-IO, L'Aquila Town, and Blue Myers, conflicts that often erupt in spray tag battles or retaliation shootings. Despite the proximity of redevelopment and the memory of towers standing, Carr Square Village remains stubbornly defined by corner politics, street tension, and community pride. The old projects might be gone, but the village and its stories live on in the asphalt, the block names, and the beats that carry them. Running east-west along the 4900 block of Aldine Street, 49 ASAP is also known as SAP Game. 49 Aldine, or Spook B Game, has been a fixture of South City's alleyway hustle since the late 1980 and early 1990. Its members fly under multiple flags: 52 Bloodstone Villains, 92 Inglewood Family Bloods, Rollin 20th Bloods, and maintain threads with 87 Kitchen Crips, illustrating a tangled web of street alliances. Founders like Stinker Man and Fila led down the foundation of a crew that leaned into the corner hustle but never fully abandoned its blood lineage. Over time, they picked up Crip ties to widen their network, some members passing through the East Coast Crip scene before returning home. Once anchored by the now demolished high-rise on Aldine, the crew's physical base has mostly vanished. Local accounts describe the area as nearly deserted, apart from the sturdy old towers still standing as mute sentinels to decades of surveillance. Much of the main block is not active and completely vacate, reads one Reddit post, marking the shift from long lines to silent lots. Rivalries simmer quietly. Their main ongoing conflicts are with 27 Marcus, 27 MAC, 4500 ALB, and OPZ, though most nights pass without incident. Their presence remains quieter today, but whenever someone visits those Aldine alleys, they're treading where ASAP once held court. Up Del Mar on the west side, through the blocks of 4100 Del Mar Avenue, sits 41 Dell, also known by crews as Ryan Block, 4000 Dell, or simply The Four. This Crip stronghold traces back to neighborhood crews that align with 83 Gangsters, Hoovers and Rollin 60s in the 80s and early 90s, all flying blue flags today under the Del Mar banner. The set unfurled in the early 1980s around the Del Mar corridor as small crews protecting corners from outsiders. OGs like L-Dog, King Mac, and their successors set up the structure. They marked their turf in local slang 4140, Del 4140, holding on to history every April 1, their annual Hood Day. One of their most notorious moments came in October 2007 when a 17-year-old 41 Dell member opened fire on undercover cops on Kings Highway during a routine traffic stop. He chased them firing while they returned shots, ending the chase in a hail of bullets. An incident cited in police training logs as a textbook example of street ambush. Today, the block still bears the scars, not just bullet holes, but the calm that followed. Though the set keeps a low profile these days, feuds remain real. They've clashed hard with the Ville, the Trex, JVL, 26 Sawway, Marcus Evans, AMG, and 60 LAC. Territorial beef that still colors beats and beats up blocks. Social feeds occasionally light up with flashes of past encounters, and police logs show Del Mar robberies and midday shootings popping on and off year round. Development hasn't come for 41 Dell. New townhomes skirt blocks south of Del Mar, but north of the boulevard, the old homes still sag and the row houses still stand in silent watch. Taggers still hit utility poles with 41 Dell, and once a year in April, the crews still claim the street, even if it's quieter than it was during the crack wars. In around 2003 to 2006, a street crew sprung up in South St. Louis the locals now refer to as 35 Cave. Centered on the 3500 block of Virginia and near Bompton, the crew began under the name DTM. Don't Trip Mob, until Chuck D, repping the old projects, was killed, an event that galvanized the set. Two trusted lieutenants, Devo and Tay, renamed the block The Cave, a clever nod to Compton plus AV anyway. Affiliated with the 92 Inglewood family and 92 Bishop's Bloods, Cave's identity grew with OGs like Chuck B, Devo, TA, Reese B, and Kareem at the helm. Tied to nearby blood-heavy zones like Peabody Projects and 1100 Edgemont, the set officially celebrates Hood Day on March 5. By the late 2000s, Cave looked like most neighborhood crews, corners marked in red, quiet hustle non-public, and the structure built on respect and revenge. But most of the crew now is either in jail or has moved on. The low-rises were torn down and the block has returned to its residential past. Still familiar, still quiet. On rare occasions like Hood Day or special remembrances, you'll still catch someone rocking the Cav tag, but the territory no longer runs like it used to. One Reddit user summed it up starkly. 35 Cave, Southside Cave, Bloods of St. Louis. That tells you everything. They were here, they were beloved, breathed, impactful, and solid. Today, 35 Cave isn't gone, but it isn't what it once was. The houses stand, the block breathes, and every March you might still spot someone standing still, looking over the old ground, remembering who they were and who they were with. On Southside St. Louis, winding through the 3400 to 3600 blocks of Tennessee Avenue, you'll find 10 Mob, also called 3610, 10 Murder Mob, or 10 Mafia. The crew traces its roots back to Minnow Mob and Northside Crips and flies the blue flag of the rolling 60s neighborhood Crips, though they also carry traces of rivalry with local Bloods. The set first took shape in the early 2000s when Crip crews from Minnow and the 4th Ward expanded their footprint down Tennessee Avenue. Crews like Doa Mob, Ace Mob, and Minnow Mob helped construct the 10 Mob identity, nominating blocks and transforming routine corner trade into a mapped-out territory where loyalty meant everything. Every March 6, 10 Mob marks its territory with Hood Day celebrations, known on the street as 3610. While a turf remains active, much of the alleyway hustle south of Gravois quieted under crackdowns and building turnover. Spot crime data shows gunfire as recent as June 16, 2025, when shots rang out on the 4700 block of Tennessee Avenue. Police marked the incident as shots fired, but no one was hurt. The alert lit up the map, reminding residents that the corners still echo. 10 Mob maintains rivalries with 35 Cave, 38 SWAT, and 39 Stripside, especially near the alley intersections of Tennessee and adjoining streets. Those conflicts are often coded into social media posts and underground rap tracks, though they rarely lead to major sweeps or headlines today. The set's lasting presence is balanced by the reality that the area faces redevelopment, but that hasn't yet swallowed the old streetwise spirit. Boarded homes sit beside occupied ones. Graffiti tags spell out 3610 on faded alley walls. On that March 6 Hood Day, you'll still find crews gathering, scanning the alleys, remembering and holding space for the past. To the stretch of Shaw Avenue, from the 3900 to the 4200 block, you'll find Shawtown, sometimes called Shaw Boys or 211 Mob, traditionally a mixed area of blood and Crip allegiance. Shawtown today flies both red and gold thanks to Deep Cross Bow and Gangster Disciples' influence alongside Rollin' 60S and Long Beach Crips Tide. OGs like Dama Lope, Dundee Lope, Droop, G-Rod, and Big C forged the set in the late 90s / early 2000s. With its blend of blood and Crip roots, it became a patchwork hood occupied on 3900, 4000, 4100, and 4200 shore blocks. Their hood day, observed March 3 and May 1-2, pulls the crew together for street-level reunions that sometimes end in late-night violence. Their musical voice, rapper Gangsta Rod, maintains a street-hardened anthem that keeps Shawtown's legacy alive. But the hood isn't just past tension, it's still fraught with violence and police presence. On November 7, 2024, a 27-year-old man was shot in the arm near Shaw and McRee in what police describe as a straight round while he was standing in his alley. He survived, but it triggered an SALPD safety alert. That shooting had echoes of the early 2000s blood/Crip turf wars, when 3,900 and 4,000 blocks were practically a frontier. Today, Shawtown maintains rivalries with Darkside Bloods and 43 Gibbs Crips, both flaring occasionally when crews cross paths. Despite this, gentrification slowly creeps toward the edge. The southern blocks have seen vinyl-sided townhomes replace old shotgun-style flats, yet north of Shaw Avenue the hood remains unchanged. Silence at noon, violence at night. Shawtown may not make daily headlines, but the pulse never left. Even as paint freshens and fences rise, the alleyways at 39th and 42nd still hum with old energy, remember names, and watchers who never forget. Along Fountain Park and Lewis Place, stretching from 46th to 49th on St. Louis's south side, lives a street lag known as the Tracks, shorthand for the Tracks, a nod to the sprawling alleyways that cut through the neighborhood. What became one of St. Louis's most notorious crews didn't just happen, they were shaped by history, alliances, and turf politics. In the 1980s, the block began under 92 Inglewood family and neighborhood Peru influence. But the true evolution came when East Coast Crips, specifically 62 East Coast and 87 Kitchen, rolled in. The Tracks rebranded itself as a hybrid crew, all Deuces Wild, Trackside, even Fountain Park boys, but it kept the local backdrop of 4900 Fountain Park and 4600 VPG as home turf. OGs like Fat Ronnie PSK, Tiger, Cooley, and Big Mike built the foundation. Later voices such as Mafia Boy P2 and Putu Yusei carried it into drill tracks and headlines. Their territory wasn't small. Blocks from 46th to 49th, cut through by old rail lines and bordered by MLK Drive, made the Tracks notable, not just in St. Louis, but regionally. At one point, local crime trackers listed sections of Fountain Park among the top 5 most violent streets in America. Today, crime remains significantly higher. Reports show around 58 incidents per 1,000 residents over the last 6 months, double many city averages. Retaliation cycles still mark their calendar. Hood days span April 5-9, spreading into June for the Tuka and Big Papa celebrations. These aren't friendly block cookouts. Tag wars spill into the alleyways and tapped up crowded scenes of clashes with rival sets like Nerve Block, Scam Block, 41 Dell, 57 Floyd Mob, 47 Parkside, and 16 Ops are common. The crew's past violence continues to echo. One retired detective recalls tracking a shooting spree in 2003, several people wounded in under 24 hours across Fountain Park, later tied to a feud between the Track and Nerve Block. No one was ever charged, but the streets never forgot. Despite gentrification pressures around Lewis Place, the old low-rises and vacant blocks remain central to their operations. On any early April morning, you'll still see the Tracks spray painted on stop signs, crumbling brick walls and boarded storefronts, proof that beneath the redevelopment and a flash of new windows, Fountain Park is still theirs after dark.